Hello, my friends. This is Deepak, and we are continuing our conversations with luminaries, influencers, sages, scientists, and a motley group of psychotics as well. So today it's my very great pleasure to reconnect with Danielle Posa and talk about how adversity can be reframed as opportunity, and how in every situation there are two ways to respond. One is through stress, anxiety, criticism, condemnation, complaints, playing the victim. But the other way is to step back, observe, and be present to the infinite possibilities that are available to you in what I call timeless now. So today it's my great pleasure to not only reconnect with Danielle Posa, but actually listen to her story so we can all learn from it and what she's doing at the present moment as well. So thank you for joining me, Danielle.
Oh, thanks, Deepak. It's so nice to see you.
How are the babies? How old are they now?
They're great. My son's gonna be 1 in 2 weeks, so I can't believe that. And then Gigi's gonna be 4 in a month from then. So, but they're great. Loving the combination of a boy and girl, which I know you know. But it's been great. A whirlwind, but it's been great.
So you've come a long way, as they say. Let's start from the beginning, your earliest memories and what happened, because it was a scary time, at least for your parents earlier in your life. And yet you seem to sail through it. So do share with all of us.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I assume you're referring to my cancer experience. And I do think that now in my older age and as a mother, I have
can I ask you now, how old are you?
36.
Oh, wow. I met you when you were what?
23.
23. So we go to that too, but start. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so no, I was just gonna say that to your comment about it being harder for my parents, I in retrospect, other times that I've told this story, I feel like I have not given enough credit to my mother and my parents, because now that I am a mom, I can't even imagine what it would be like to see your 5-year-old go through something like that. But I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a kid. You'll probably even know more about this. I think it was T cell, which my mom just recently told me is a more challenging form, and I was diagnosed in stage 3. I went through the standard process of, I had full, chemotherapy and spinal tabs, blood transfusions, the whole thing. But it was supposed to take about 2 years for me to go through treatment, and it only took a year and a half, which they were really surprised about, which I attribute to various things. But it was, for me, like I said, I mean, for me, it was way harder on my parents. I do remember a good amount of it, and I remember short instances of being afraid to go to get my portacath put in, being afraid of spinal taps. Like I remember what it felt like after chemotherapy. I remember, what the hospital was like, but overall, it wasn't something that was a traumatic event for me, because, this is where I think it ties into the whole difference of a child's mind versus an adult mind, and a child can go through things and see things at face value and not add all the extra meaning and stories and drama to it that adults do. So in one sense, I'm grateful that I had it as a kid and could come out of it and reflect on that experience and derive meaning from that experience, but without having to go through the challenges that I would have gone through if I had it as an adult. So that experience, it's not, I would say it's not so much the experience that happened that has driven a lot of my decisions in life. It's the reflections that I've had on on the experience that have influenced my life the most, I think. So,
So
but that's where it all began.
Let's go over that. First of all, you didn't have the knowledge that adults have about cancer.
Right.
And when an adult hears the word cancer these days,
Yeah.
They think death sentence.
Yep.
And that's how they interpret it in their mind, even though, by the way, today we know that many cancers are curable, and also they don't have to be a terminal disease. It's like chronic disease being diagnosed with diabetes or whatever, and can be controlled.
Yep.
But you actually not only controlled this thing, you cured yourself. I say that because an adult getting the same treatment would be petrified of the side effects, what we call the nocebo effect, the opposite of placebo effect. And that certainly, that state induces inflammation and anxiety and stress and release of hormones that interferes with the healing process. So
yeah, I mean,
because
I
you were
am
innocent, you didn't have all those challenges,
yeah.
right?
I mean, I believe that wholeheartedly. I've said that, you know, as when an adult gets cancer, you get cancer of the mind. You get, like you just said, you all of these thoughts, you know, get part of, you know, as you've taught me, get part of your whole body, your cellular, you know, your actual cells start to feel and believe it and wonder about it and question, and all of that, you know, I have believed can then perpetuate and kind of catalyze, you know, the cancer even further. So when I thought about how I was as a kid, because I was very active, I was a very happy kid. I remember joking around about everything, making fun of my, you know, my hair fell out, like doing crazy things with my bald head, and like I would always kind of make light of the situations. And obviously at the time I wasn't doing that I wasn't doing that intentionally or thinking that that was helping me, you know, like cure myself. But my mom said the doctors were shocked by the fact that every time I got a round of chemotherapy, they thought that my body was going to take more time, I guess, between like each round and would need more recovery. And they said she's fine, she's doing well. And I was able to progress with the treatment very quickly. And I would say, you know, I don't want to credit myself. Like my mom was very kind of focused on health, and was always trying to keep me very healthy and very active, keeping my mind occupied on other things. But I think there's this power of the will and the spirit to heal. And part of when I do come across people who are sick as an adult, one of the first things I say to them is first almost like make the choice to live, like, and like you make sure you're harnessing that power of your spirit and your will first and foremost, so that then whatever the treatment is you have to go through can do its work even better, because it's operating inside of a system that's wants to kind of propel itself forward. So,
and once again, how old were you there when all this happened?
well, I was diagnosed when I was 5, yeah, and I turned 6 shortly after.
Okay, so now let's move forward. You had a happy childhood. After that, you went to school, etc., and you were always kind of an entrepreneur in your own mind and in your life. Tell me about those knives that you were selling and how that came about.
You love that knife story. Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in. I was like selling things probably from when I was like 5 years old. I used to charge my mom's friends to paint their nails. But then when I was in college, I worked for Cutco Knives. So it's basically selling kitchen cutlery and like kitchenware, but it was very entrepreneurial. Kind of what you put in is what you get out. And I thought it was awesome, because I love the idea of the fact that as much as I want to work, I can make as much money as I want to make. And at the time I was 19, it was my sophomore year of college, and I said I could either be a lifeguard for $500 for my month. I had a month school break like during January, or I can try to find something maybe in sales where I can make more money and learn some more and not just be sitting like in a lifeguard chair. So I found Cutco, and I ended up breaking a national record for that month in sales, basically I set up a lot of appointments, and I saw it as an opportunity to like build relationships with people that I knew, and I really believed in the product, and I loved the whole experience because you just learn so much about business. And so I broke the national record, and then I went on to do some managerial stuff with them throughout college. So
How much money did you make with that prize?
well, I sold almost $30,000 worth of knives, and then I think I made almost $9,000 that month as a 19-year-old in college. So that was definitely the most amount of money I made, up until that point, for sure. So
Okay, let's move a little further in your life. You're 19, then you go to college and you graduate, and somehow you end up in Gallup working with me. By the way, I
yeah.
spoke to John Clifton yesterday, and
Oh, okay.
he's written a very nice book on the happiness or unhappiness of the world right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah,
We
I
get
started
to
reading it.
your role in Gallup, but how we met because of
Yeah.
Jim Clifton, so the CEO of the Gallup organization. And
hmm
so let's share that story, how that happened.
Yeah. Well, that was so synchronistic. I don't know if you remember the whole beginning of that, right? And how I saw your name. Because when I was in college at the time, I was doing some research because I actually didn't think I wanted to work for anybody. I was in the midst of working on another company at the time. And so I really had no interest in interviewing anywhere. But I started to do just a little bit of research, wanted to keep my options open. And I went to the Gallup site, and I loved what their mission was, because I remember seeing a quote on their site from George Gallup that said, if democracy is the will of the people, then someone should find out what that will is. And I was like, I just found that very intriguing. And then I saw that what Gallup was doing around the world was assessing what people really wanted, what they really thought, what was important to them in life, and then sharing that information with leaders, public and private sector leaders. And so I love that whole idea of influencing the minds of leaders by genuinely knowing what people were thinking around the world. So that's what made me look at the Gallup site. But then I saw your name as one of the senior scientists. And at the time I was 23. So honestly, Deepak, I don't think I had read any of your books, but I saw your name, and I remember thinking that anything I had seen of you was fascinating. And the mind body connection was something that always resonated with me because of the cancer experience. And then I said to myself, wow, if I work at this company, I'm going to find a way to meet Deepak, because, I remember where I was when I had that thought. So then when I was at Gallup, I saw Jim Clifton in the office, and I asked him about you. And I said, what's our relationship with Deepak? And, is he actually involved, or is he just a name on the website? And he said, oh no, he's a good friend. Next time I'm in town, I'll bring you to lunch. And then, as synchronicity would have it, the reason why he was in town was to talk about the well-being book that had just been published. And he wanted to share that information with you. I had read that book immediately when it came out. I thought it was the future, because I thought the whole world is going to be focused on well-being at some point. We're going to need to measure it. So I thought the book was so important. So he was bringing us to lunch together to talk about the book that I was super passionate about. And then that was when he made me like your liaison for the research and the information. And that was kind of where it started.
That began a very wonderful professional relationship between you and me.
Yeah.
You were very diligent about gathering all the data on things like corporate well-being, physical well-being, social well-being, financial well-being, community well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And that data ultimately was useful for me as well, as we moved into the world. And, I always included well-being as part of my courses on the soul of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we did a few seminars together on the soul of leadership. So talk to the world right now, talk to everyone about why well-being and leadership should go together. This is your forte.
Yeah, yes, I love that question. So, my work on that subject has evolved a lot over the years, and it's only become, I was passionate about it before the pandemic hit. Now the world is finally understanding that well-being needs to be on the minds of leaders. But aside from just being on the minds of leaders, and this is where when you and I did that course together, the whole thing started, was that real conscious leadership, or mindful leadership, as people say, is really a function of whether or not a leader is taking care of themselves, their own well-being, and has a genuine interest in the well-being of the people that they lead. And that doesn't just mean the mental health or the fitness. It means their livelihood. It means their overall sense of their abilities to thrive. And my bigger picture of the whole thing, which, to be honest, a lot of this stemmed from Gallup, because Jim Clifton used to talk about this all the time, but that the world needs to measure that, that well-being needs to be a core measurement of success in society, because measurements and metrics rule the world. What we aren't measuring doesn't matter and does not get attention. It's not what people are talking about at boardroom tables. It's not, the G20 isn't selected by the top well-being countries in the world, right? It's that they're selected economically. So until it's at the forefront, the world will constantly be moving towards a direction that is not focused on elevating people's lives. It's more just a function of progress and productivity that doesn't necessarily correlate with people having good lives. So to me, that intersection between leaders having this appreciation for well-being to the point that they are measuring it, where they're seeing it as a matter of their own integrity as a leader to care about themselves and their people. I just think that that's the future. And at the end of the day, it only has a positive impact on the economics anyway. So we might as well focus on well-being, because the economics will follow. If you just focus on the economics, well-being will not necessarily follow. So it just, that to me is really, that's really where the future needs to head. And when I think about some of the things you say, or about your loss of hope for humanity, which I'd love to ask you where you stand on that now. I think one of the only ways that we won't kind of go downhill as a species is if we do that, because as long as we're, again, chasing the wrong thing and just progress for progress sake, speed, technology, all of those things are going to get out of control to the point where we do just send ourselves, off the deep end. So this intersection between well-being and leadership, and then in the public sector too, to me, it has a lot of power that if we were actively measuring well-being, we would be evaluating our public officials by whether or not countries got better. If the well-being score of a country increased as a result of that public official, or when they're making a lot of empty promises to society, we would be able to, hold them to account for those promises by saying, well, did well-being actually increase when you implemented that law or that idea? So there's just, so to sum it up, I would just say that there is just an enormous amount of positive impact that can come with that intersection between well-being and leaders.
So the corporate well-being of this whole 5 buckets of well-being that Gallup has explored is fundamentally inseparable from what we call physical well-being, emotional and social well-being, community well-being, financial well-being. They're all kind of entangled. And some of the questions that Gallup asks are very unique. How much did you experience enjoyment and laughter every day?
Yeah.
Or on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the quality of your life? And then you can go very specifically in each of the 5 buckets, and you can assess for an individual, for a family, for a business, for a community, for an organization, for a nation,
Mm-hmm.
total well-being, as we call it. And then you see that it's related to things like in a society, crime rate and
Right. Yeah.
emissions and success in business and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, exactly. You layer the data, which is
yeah.
where you see the insights. Yeah.
So this became your passion, and we worked together on it for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
which was very wonderful for me.
Mm-hmm.
As I got all this insight from somebody who's not my generation, but is thinking fresh. So I just
Uh-huh.
want to say that, I say I don't believe in hope. I want to clarify that. Hope is a sign of despair. It's an oxymoron. When somebody says,
Mm-hmm.
"Are you hopeful?" that automatically implies that we're in despair. They go
Mm-hmm.
together. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in hope, but I do believe in creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we are sharing with the world, that there are creative solutions to a more peaceful, you're familiar with this mantra of mine, more peaceful, more just, more
Just, yeah.
sustainable, more
Mm-hmm.
healthy, and more joyful life.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
there's creative opportunity for
Mm-hmm.
all of us. All we have to do is look at the data and then actually create in a way, a world community of personal and social transformation. So we can be the change we want to see in the world. Peace can
Mm-hmm.
only be created by those who
And
are.
do you think that's possible still? Because I know I don't know, I feel like lately you've.
If I didn't think it was possible
Mm-hmm.
creatively, then I would not be doing what I do.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, I believe in the domain of infinite possibilities as our fundamental state. So, which
Mm-hmm.
leads me actually now to my next question in your journey.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing these days? Let's talk about that, because apparently you've taken this now to a new level.
Yeah. Well, so I call myself a workplace well-being advisor. So mainly in the grand scheme of what I just talked about, I mostly focus on workplaces as vehicles for change. And I work more so at the advisory level with executive teams that are interested in well-being, but not well-being like a program for their employees, like only with organizations that are saying we're committed to well-being, we are committed to it for a long haul, we see it as part of our culture. And so then I work with them on that culture strategy and help them understand how to define it, how to measure it within the organization, when to bring in the right vendors or programs or solutions, but not starting there. So I do a combination of, consulting and advisory work, and then I also run different types of trainings and workshops on the subject as well.
Yeah, and you're pretty busy. You have a good business, right?
Yeah, and it's been pretty organic. I mean, I do still, since my son is only, he's not even one yet, so I actually work a 6-hour day so that I can spend some time with him in the morning, and my daughter too, but especially since he's so young, I actually don't want to be super overloaded, but I have, more than enough work that I can handle right now. And then I have some plans for developing what I'm doing into something more substantial as
Like
well,
what?
but doing
Like,
that slowly. Yeah.
like what?
Well, so my company's Workplace Wellbeing Advisors, and I'm bringing together, kind of a group of experts, I would say, like myself, who have the same, like level of experience or even more experience than I have, that are really, really great at workplace well-being and that have worked in major organizations, and putting together an advisory group. Because what I've been finding with different organizations is that they're very confused with who to trust and who can really be a trusted advisor in the space of workplace well-being. So by putting together, a more substantial group of people and really building out an advisory group, almost like Gallup, but specifically focused on well-being, that's part of the vision. And then having a platform that they can also engage with to get, more digital consulting module and content as well. But primarily it would be like an advisory group. So
Wonderful. Now, I hate to bring this up, but we should, because you've been challenged more than once. And when you were working with us and Punacha and myself, and you went to India for Jayo, etc., when you stepped off the plane, when you got back to the United States, you had shocking news about your father.
Yeah.
Will you share that?
Yeah, sure. No, and I don't mind you bringing it up at all. If anything, I appreciate it, because I like to be able to, talk about my dad. And I also think that talking about death is important, as you know, and you have no problem doing that. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit in this conversation, but or maybe as a segue to what I'm about to say. But yeah, so in 2016, it was actually in the middle of you and I doing our courses, right? We did our first one in February. My dad passed in April, and then we had our second course in November. So I was in India for 30 days for my 30th birthday. And it was just it was really crazy. The what's the right word? The what you would know the word of, like, it's the fact that I had
juxtaposition.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Because I was 30 days of being in India. I went all over, traveled the country by myself, met you synchronistically. That was pretty crazy that we ended up in the same city at the same time. And
which city was that?
That was either Delhi or Mumbai, I think. It was one of the bigger
Punacha
cities,
was
right?
there too, right?
Yeah. But right, isn't that crazy that we happened to, I don't know, that was just so funny. But so I spend so much time, like, journaling and reading, and I always love, like, spending time, myself. This is before my kids and everything. And I felt so good. I had so many moments of clarity, was thinking about what I wanted to evolve my business into. So I was just like riding this high, and I literally land in JFK, and my voicemails are populating in my phone, and I hear a scary voicemail. I was like, this sounds concerning, and I forget about it. I go through immigration, come back, I'm waiting for my luggage, and I said, oh, I forgot to call that number back. So I call it back, and as soon as the woman answers the phone, she says, are you Vincent Posa's daughter? And as soon as she asked me that question, of course, my heart dropped. And my initial thought is, I just thought he got hurt or something bad had happened. And then she said, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but he died in a motorcycle accident just yesterday. And I mean, I was very close with my dad. I'm the oldest of four girls, as you know. And I mean, I practically collapsed and had to be wheelchaired out to my mom and sister who were picking me up from the airport. And that was kind of where it all began. And then I was the executor of his estate. So then I had to quickly go into managing all of his affairs, but he also had a real estate business in Florida, and I had to manage that and all of his tenants, and and kind of figure out how we were going to then continue to manage that as a family. But it was and you helped me through the process, because you and I were in a lot of communication then, especially I think because we were doing those courses, and I felt like I was able to take a more spiritual road to the process, I think in part because of you, for sure. But I think one of the things that really helped me get through it was that I always say I went through like grieving boot camp, because I had, a few months of like where I was like living in his house, managing his affairs, driving his car, like seeing his tenants, and so I was being triggered just like constantly by things that made me sad and frustrated or angry or regretful. And I had to, like, I was kind of forced to process all of my feelings and allow myself to feel them, which I think not a lot of people do. Sometimes you try to suffocate the feelings or suppress them. But a lot of it kind of like came out for me. And I also was able to appreciate my dad and his life and everything, because I was living the nuances of it. So yeah, but I will say I came out of it. I think.
So once again, I mean, this was a period of intense grief for you.
Mm-hmm.
You felt your grief, you processed it, you at the same time were very practical about tending to his affairs and settling everything. It was a very rough time, I know, but even here there was amazing growth with him and an entry into the domain of what we call spirituality or awareness. So I also remember that sometime later you went to some country in the Caribbean, and you
Bermuda
course with Werner Erhard. Just in the 70s, I became very familiar with Werner's work, and I also studied.
You never met him though, or did you ever meet him?
No, I didn't. But you introduced him to me through email, so I communicated with him. But his work was very compelling to me, and it was actually a modern day translation, I would say, of a deeper understanding of consciousness or reality. So I know we have to, we have time constraints today, but I'd like to ask you your insight into at least two of the principles that were very compelling. We talk about authenticity, integrity, higher calling, cause in the matter. And those are very standard, by the way, well-known principles, spiritual principles of conscious leadership. But something that people may or may not understand clearly is the phrase cause in the matter. And what I was doing actually yesterday or whatever, I was going over some of the notes that you sent me. And I'm the cause of everything in life, in my life, or I would even say life, is a place to stand from which to view and deal with life. Talk about that for a moment. What's your
Sure. And you know what? It ties to what we were saying earlier about kind of like well-being and leadership and conscious leadership. So cause in the matter is a concept. So Werner had talked about 4 different kind of core foundations of leadership. And cause in the matter is one of them. And the idea of it is that you are cause in the matter of everything that happens in your life, but that it's distinct from that you cause everything that happens in your life, or that you are responsible or at fault for. So it doesn't mean that. So cause in the matter, like you just said, is a place to stand and operate from in your life. So if you're causing the matter of your life, that basically means that whatever it is that happens, so I guess to use the example of my father, if I'm causing the matter of what happened, that of my father's death, I can choose to say, where can I be responsible for how my life looks like, from this point on, so then what that does is it shifts away from any victim mindset completely, gets you out of this, mindset of like, why did that happen to me? He shouldn't have died. I shouldn't have to go, any of that. By being cause in the matter, it's a place to stand to say, no matter what happens, there is always something that I can do or influence or take responsibility for, and actually, be kind of that be at the helm, in a sense, of my life and the direction that it goes in.
It's brilliant, because I was thinking of this as it relates to a very misunderstood concept in the West. And that misunderstood concept is what we call karma. And, karma in the Sanskrit word simply means actions. Karma is action. And so we make choices all the time, and then we act on those choices. But most of our choices are unconscious. And when they become conscious, we move from victimhood to creativity. And so this is what karma is about. Karma is our experiences of the past and
Mhm.
how we interpreted them. So
Mhm.
the experiences of the past led you to those pivotal moments, the cancer, the
Mhm.
landing in New York, getting
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
news. But then you chose to interpret them while also accepting them. You
Mhm.
accepted them, and then you chose to uh, reinterpret them, reframe them, but also embrace them and feel them.
Mhm. Mhm.
As they say, the cure for grief is the grief itself.
Right, right.
Rumi says the cure for fear is the fear itself. He said the way
Mhm.
out of the
I
fire is
love that.
through the fire. The way out of the fire is through the fire. So you
Mhm.
went through the fire, and now
Mhm.
here we are.
Mhm.
The other concept that I found very appealing from Werner Erhard, who's not a neuroscientist, was where is experience happening? So let's
Mhm.
talk about that, because that is very important right now for people to understand if they want to tap into what we call fundamental reality. So where is experience happening?
Yeah, there so and I
You
and
and
I,
I,
I
where are you right now?
that's a good question, especially since we're on this virtual magical like technology platform, right? Well, first of all, before I forget, I found the actual exercise that I want to send to you because you and I had talked about this in the past.
Send it to me
But
again, but do
uh,
you want to share it now, or I
yeah,
can?
yeah, yeah,
I
sure.
remember it. I remember it enough.
Yeah, okay. No,
But
okay. Yeah, so well, so what he so if I think if we're talking about the same thing, like so actually when I was in the course, the way that he went about it was he first tried to get everyone to understand that we operate in this from this context of believing that I am here and everything else in life is there. So there's this automatic and it's a subconscious thing, obviously, that's happening of kind of like that there is a separation. And anytime you ask somebody, where are they, say, well, I'm right here. And then you say, okay, well then, where am I standing? And the person would say, oh, you're standing right there. Where is the clock? It's over there. So our whole experience as a human beings is that I'm here, everything else in the world is there. And then he went into say, well, then where are you exactly? When you say you are here, and I know, you always kind of have forced me to think about like, well, what is you really? And that was part of what he was doing. So you'd say, well, where are you? Where are you experiencing you or yourself? And he would do this with somebody in the front of the room. And then so the person would say, they'd kind of struggle with it a little bit and say, well, some people would point to their mind, other people would point to their heart, but there was obviously no real consensus about where you is like localized. And you say, and then so then you're here or there or somewhere over here, and then where am I? I'm there. And then there was this, and it's hard to like understand the significance of this without really experiencing it. But then you start to realize like, well, if I can't really localize myself, then I'm not really localized anywhere. And then you start to like realize that, well, if I'm not localized anywhere, then everything else isn't there. I might actually be there as well. And you start to realize that our experience of life is actually almost just an extension of you, like of who we say you is, or where I am. So I guess to clarify, so I'll tell you how I kind of realize this that I think might make it easier for people to understand who are listening to this. But that night I was in Bermuda and I'm laying in my hotel room and I can see the ocean out my window and I'm laying there and I'm reading my slides and I was so still and I started to think about the question of like, where am I and where does the end of me occur? Like that if I am this body, can I feel the edges of my body? And I started to realize like if I'm staying very, very still and I start to feel myself on fingertips as you do in meditation and start to feel where do I feel that I actually end? And I realized I couldn't feel that. Like I can't, I couldn't feel the end of myself. And then I looked out on the ocean and realized that I'm experiencing the ocean somewhere and myself. And if I stay really still, I actually felt like I was out there with the ocean. And I mean, the experience brought me to tears because like in that moment, I actually felt myself in the cliche way that, we hear in the poets of like, you are the ocean. I was like, I literally felt myself as an extension all the way out there but it came from first realizing I couldn't localize myself. And then therefore, and so the kind of big, I think kind of the big aha and meaning behind all of it is that then there's like this connectedness between us and all of it, like, because we're not this, physical human being walking around. We can actually, like, if we can, embody some of that thinking in our day to day of like, we're really not separate. There is this connectedness that's happening that's kind of unfathomable on most days, but it can change the way that you really think about, how you're walking through the world. So I don't know if that's where you really wanted me to go with that question.
You
But
did very well.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations. As usual, you get a B plus or an A plus. Or
Really, an A plus from you? I'll take it. I
Okay.
mean, it doesn't
So
get any better than that.
here's the
How would you describe it though?
okay. So right now, if somebody asked me, where am I? Or let's assume that my identity is Deepak and yours is Danielle. So if somebody said, where's Deepak? You would say there, but right now, Deepak is on your computer and Danielle is on my computer. And even though we have two different computers, we are perceptually in the same perceptual window. But that perceptual window is in a domain of awareness that we call consciousness, because without consciousness, there's no experience. Consciousness is the place where experience happens. So when you say, I am here, then you assume there's somebody here looking out at the world, little Deepak, looking out of the world through the eyes. But there's no little Deepak here. And there's no little Danielle in the brain there. Where is the experience happening? This experience right now. Depending on your understanding, you would say it's happening on the computer, it's happening in my eyes or ears, auditory, visual, or it's happening in my brain. But when you look at these organs, all they show is electricity and electrochemicals, right? They don't show a picture of Danielle or the sound of her voice or picture of me. So the only conclusion is that's happening in consciousness or awareness. Then the next question is, where is this consciousness? You can't see it because of many reasons. Just like the tooth can't bite itself, the eyes can't see themselves, consciousness can't experience itself. And the reason it can't experience, actually even the brain can't experience itself. You put a knife through the brain, there's no pain. Okay, so what's going on? This is right now called the hard problem of consciousness. So we say, at least we agree that it's happening in consciousness, but where is this consciousness? Can't find it. Can't find it here, can't find it there, can't find it there. Well, then where is it? And the answer from all the great spiritual traditions is that it's formless. It doesn't have a form. Being formless, it's infinite. Being infinite, it's not in space-time. So every experience we have, this experience, the experience of this book, the experience of this body, the experience of the Milky Way galaxy, the experience of the ocean, is all happening, is being processed in awareness, which is beyond space and time, which means that you and I are beyond space and time. And this is a perceptual artifact. It's what we call an illusion. And what consciousness does is, in order to have experience, it can only know itself as subject and object. It divides itself as the perceptual activity of the subject of experience and the object of experience. But in reality, subject and object are processed in the same infinite domain. So once you understand that's your real identity, non-local, then there is no death, there is no birth. What
Mm-hmm.
happens is birth and death are two perceptual activities which began at the moment you were a fertilized egg, and then you were a zygote, then you were an embryo, then you're a baby, then you're a toddler, then you're a young adult or teenager, old adult, mature adult, all the way to dusty death. But you confuse yourself with that. That is not who you are.
Right, right.
Body mind is not who you are. That's another perceptual activity, which is modified form of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
When you understand that, you come to the same conclusion that the great sages came to. You and I are awareness. You and I and the entire universe, including my watch, including this magazine, is awareness. You say, oh, this is made of awareness. I thought it's made of paper. But actually, it is made of modalities of awareness. It's made of texture, sight, taste, smell, which are modalities of awareness, which then in the human mind are constructed as a magazine or a piece of paper or a tree. But even the tree is ecosystems of life, birds and bees and fauna and flora and rain and sunshine and earth and water. What is this made of? It's the whole universe. And the whole universe exists in awareness. That's why, in the Yoga Vaishishta, infinite universes come and go in the vast expanse of consciousness, like motes of dust dancing in a beam of light. And that's the current science, by the way. So brilliant.
Well, on that note with the death, because I feel like the connection that you make to death, and because we've talked about death in this conversation, and part of what spurred me even like wanting to talk to you is because I know you've been saying to me so many times, like, I'm preparing for death, which nobody ever says, right? Like, I mean, in our society, at least, not, it's definitely not something people in America say.
It's the awakening of life in death. When Buddha died, his last words were, I'm awake.
Yeah. So on that note, like, I would love to hear you like share more about that, because from what you were just saying, like, I think one of the other realizations I had with my dad's death was that death is only so significant because of the fact that we see ourselves as so human and so physical, which therefore makes death a very frightening thing for people. But if we understood the realm of consciousness and the way you explained it more, it would seem just like a transition of our consciousness where we're still we're in a different plane, taking on a different form, and it would make the concept of death a lot more kind of bearable for people. So how, I guess, can you kind of like maybe share more about?
We should conclude with this idea because we're running out of time now.
Okay. I guess it's a big topic to try to squeeze in.
A human construct. So think of it this way. Death happens to a provisional and false identity. You say, who is Deepak? One of you say, I'm preparing for death. So one of my practices is at night, I recapitulate my entire life. So I close my eyes and I feel my presence and my mother's presence when I was 5 years old, sitting on her lap. And I can see her face, I can hear her voice, and I can even smell her skin now. Okay, when I recapitulate. Then I say, where is that person now? And where is that little boy now? I can't find them either. Okay, so they are now in my awareness, they are dreams, right? That boy, that teenager is a dream. That mother is a dream. But then where is yesterday now? It's a dream. Where is this morning now? It's a dream. Where are these words? By the time you hear them, they actually don't exist. So the whole thing is a dream, and we are the dreamer. So, when Wittgenstein said, our life is a dream, we are asleep, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. When you wake up, that is awakening. So even the Buddha was dying. He was asked, who are you? Are you God? Are you a messenger? Are you a Messiah? Are you a prophet? He said, no. So he said, before you die, please tell us who you are. He said, I'm awake. Those were his last words.
I love that.
So I think we should stop here, Danielle, because there's a lot more to discuss and we can do that. But this was a very enjoyable conversation.
Same here.
you move from trauma, tragedy, adversity to not only creativity, but a deeper understanding of reality. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for
Oh,
joining us.
well, thank you. And thanks for just, taking such a interest in my whole story and really
I
for
think your
everything
story
that,
will benefit a lot of people.